Paano mapabubuti ang buhay ng lahat ngayon at sa hinaharap? We have the power to bring good to the country. Sa pinagsama-sama nating lakas, maisusulong ang mga pamayanan at kalunsuran, magbibigay liwanag kahit kanino, kahit kailan, magbibigay lakas na laging maaasahan. Power that protects Mother Earth. Lakas na maghahatid sa atin ng kalinisan at kaginhawaan sa mundong luntian. Mula sa ating mga himpilan hanggang makarating sa ating pinaglilingkuran. May kakayahan tayong maging masinop.
Thanks, Hannah. I brought my own.
Upang mapangalagaan ang daigdig, ang ating tanging tahanan, at maging ang ating kalusugan. We have the power to care for our people. Kalingain sila para mapaigting ng aming serbisyo sa inyo tungo sa maginhawang buhay at kinabukasan.
Your new home is now connected.
Salamat!
We can help bring forth prosperity and a brighter future for all. Sama-sama nating ilawan ang landas sa ikabubuti ng buhay at ng bukas ng ating mga mahal sa buhay. Powering the good life. Meralco.
Since the beginning, Meralco has envisioned providing the country with power to give every Filipino a better and more comfortable way of life. And for 120 years, it has been delivering light, power, and energy to homes, businesses, and industries.
And now, Meralco is moving into a new era. For the past 60 years, the company has worked to create an intensified network and a resilient distribution facility. In the past few years, it has created vital programs to initiate channels of communication and proactively address the needs of its consumers. One important sector of Meralco's consumer base are enterprise customers.
These are institutions that require at least 500 kilowatts of power, and they include developers, manufacturers, multinationals, and conglomerate entities.
It is for them that Meralco created the enterprise segment to serve their power requirements. To enable these facilities to receive optimum power service, Meralco begins with the thorough pre-planning of network assets.
Meralco has also been building smart substations intended to provide adequate and reliable power. We have installed an advanced distribution management system with a wide array of distribution and substation automation and data analytics technologies.
The optimization and digitalization of our grid have made Meralco more productive and reliable.
As a responsive partner in business, Meralco is poised to help customers improve their bottom line.
Hence, we come armed with tailor-fit energy solutions such as contract right-sizing and other measures to ensure energy efficiency and sustainability. And because customers need to understand the full extent of their energy requirements, Meralco conducts such collaborative steps as power quality audit and energy efficiency consultation.
As the world faces increasing challenges in energy supply, Meralco is focused on finding renewable and green energy solutions.
Already, we started operating a solar power plant in Bulacan that has a current capacity of 55 megawatts.
Meralco is looking at sources of clean energy that will not harm the environment, alongside business units that promote clean energy through solar rooftops and electric vehicle adoption.
Meralco has set its sight on building a portfolio of reliable, affordable, and sustainable renewable energy.
Furthermore, we have initiated programs to address issues that affect the environment, like direct emissions reduction, resource efficiency, and waste management.
It is Meralco's commitment to preserve and protect the environment. To narrow the gap, we embarked on a series of webinars and fora to connect with and engage our customers.
As our valued partners, it is our commitment to inform them of these energy solutions that Meralco has put in place to meet their ever-evolving business needs.
Through this, we hope to continue to improve their experience with Meralco as we walk with them into the future of energy towards a customer-centric and sustainable future.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Power Up Live. My name is Dane Rialuyo, Relationship Manager from the Meralco Enterprise Consumer Group. This afternoon's webinar is an economic briefing that focuses on the Philippine economy's state of affairs through the lenses of our esteemed guests from ADB and NEDA, and how it impacts the commercial and industrial sectors.
And I'm Rick Panes, Relationship Manager for Meralco Enterprises Utility Group. This afternoon, our keynote speakers will be sharing their points of view from an ASEAN and Philippine economy market. Later, we zero in on the economic impact to the energy sector and a response from our panelists from the business sector. It's going to be an extremely informative and insightful webinar, so do find a quiet and comfortable spot with a good internet speed. It would be great if you use headsets or earphones for best quality audio so you don't miss out on the conversations that will take place today. We just have some reminders. We would like to inform everyone that this meeting will be recorded for data keeping, data quality assurance, and for learning purposes related to the subject matter to be discussed. Throughout this webinar, feel free to type your questions and comments on the chat box. We encourage you to identify yourself so we can acknowledge you properly.
Please also be reminded to avoid posting personal details such as your service ID number, address, or mobile number in the chat.
Before we proceed, we would like to acknowledge customers who are in attendance in today's webinar. We have our friends from the Ayala Land, Inc., Universal Robina Corporation, our friends from Globe Telecoms, Inc., Landev Corporation.
We also have our friends from Mitsubishi Motors Philippines Corporation, Toyota Motor Philippines Corporation, Petron Corporation, SAPI, Ajinomoto Philippines Corporation, Unilever, NutriAsia, UP Diliman, FEU Roosevelt, Pure Gold Price Club Inc., Leslie Corporation, Finma Property Holdings Corporation, PNB, BPI, China Bank, and finally Suzuki Philippines Incorporated.
Thank you very much for taking time to join us this afternoon.
And now, to formally open the webinar, we're proud to present our Vice President and Head of Meralco Enterprise and National Government, Engineer Maria Cecilia Domingo.
Thank you, Jane and Rick. Good afternoon, everyone. Finally, we are gathered today for a truly exciting and thought-leading forum. We are very fortunate to have our distinguished guests from the Asian Development Bank, the National Economic and Development Authority, and from the commercial and industrial sectors represented by the Association of Vehicle Importers and Distributors and KMC Savills. On behalf of Meralco Enterprise and National Government segment, I wish to warmly welcome you all this afternoon to the Philippine Energy and Economy Update. As part of Meralco's commitment to deliver excellent customer service, it is our mandate to share relevant and timely information which may guide businesses amid these ever-changing times. Today, we have invited economic experts from the esteemed offices of ADB and NEDA to provide us holistic key insights on the correlation between energy and economy. As these two are closely linked, we will learn how these affect many aspects of national growth, particularly its impact on businesses. As energy consumers and movers of the economy, businesses are directly affected by this dynamic, as evidenced during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, knowledge is power. Being equipped with information allows businesses to navigate their operations strategically. Meralco has in total 119 years of service and expertise, but this responsibility moves us more to innovate and collaborate in order to offer future-proof and sustainable solutions to our customers as we progress into a more robust digital and technological age. To our keynote speakers and panelists, we truly appreciate your precious time and expertise, especially your support in this initiative to inform our customers. To our dear attendees, I do hope you find this webinar valuable. With our expert panelists who are leaders in their respective leagues, we aim to trigger meaningful conversations and awaken interest on the peripheral issues on energy and the economy. Thank you, and please continue to stay safe and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Cecil, for welcoming everyone to the webinar. Before we introduce our first speaker, we would like to find out what your expectations are from today's webinar. Please go to the link you see on your chat or scan the QR code you see on your screen and share with us what you hope to take away from your speakers and the panelists this afternoon.
All right, everyone. Go on and enter the Mentimeter so that we can find out what our audiences have expected.
Okay.
All right, so our first question, what do you hope to take away from our speakers and the panelists this afternoon?
Okay, we're still waiting for some responses from our participants.
Yes, so while waiting, we would also like to acknowledge guests from Changan Motor Philippines Inc. and Harryfield Asia Resources. Welcome to the webinar. So do we have any results, Rick? Oh, it's loading now.
Yeah, it is.
Guidance.
Okay.
Outlook, industry trends, economy.
Economy. Interesting. Now, all of this will be discussed later, and I do hope our guests, our participants, will find the discussions this afternoon would be, as mentioned earlier, it would be very exciting and insightful.
Yes, and with that, we open the floor for the Philippine Energy and Economy Update.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dane. He is an expert on sustainable development who expanded the implementation of the Energy Efficiency Initiative in developing member countries of the Asian Development Bank. He is a chartered electrical engineer, a member of the Institute of Engineering Technology in the UK, a senior member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, a fellow of the Institution of Engineers in Sri Lanka, and a past president of the Sri Lanka Energy Managers Association. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chief of the Energy Sector Group of the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department of the Asian Development Bank, Dr. Priyantha Wijayatunga.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, distinguished panelists. First of all, let me thank Meralco for inviting me for this very important webinar. And I am really glad that I can contribute to the discussions today. Let us start my presentation. Yes, so when I was invited, what I thought was it would be good to talk about the energy policy, which we just approved in ADB, because ADB's energy sector interventions in Asia and the Pacific is quite big, and therefore how this new energy policy impact the development of the energy sector in developing Asia, it's very important to discuss and see what it would take to get the region moved towards the clean energy development. So with that, let me go to the outline of the presentation. Yeah, so what I would do, I will take you through some of the key challenges we have in the energy sector, concentrating on Asia and the Pacific region. Then let's look at the opportunities and changing the energy landscape, and what ADB energy portfolio would look like as it stands now, in the past and into the future. And then I will go into the highlights of the energy policy and few final remarks, and this will basically take you through the implications it will have in the developing Asia as far as the energy sector is concerned. So if you look at the key challenges what we face in the Asia and the Pacific region, I have categorized it as three key challenges. That's energy access. You may not realize that in the Asia-Pacific region, we have 350 million people still without adequate access to electricity supplies. And 150 million people still have no access to electricity. So there is slightly different, slight difference between the two, of course. When you say adequate access, it means you may not, you may have the connection, but you may not have the right voltage, reliability, the continuity of supply right throughout the day, and so on. So, but 150 million people not even have access to electricity. And then on top of that, the interesting thing is that we have 1.5 billion people almost without access to clean cooking, which is also a challenge we face. Then energy security. And on the energy security side, we expect the Asia Pacific region to have the electricity demand double by 2040, which is a very important thing to recognize. Because that eventually means, impact on energy security and requirement of resources to develop this. And then, what it means is that when it comes to renewable energy investment in the region, you need roughly about $1 trillion annually by 2030. So that's again an enormous, task to find this money because that's where financing institutions like ADB can play a role. Then comes the environmental sustainability. And if you look at the global emissions, particularly greenhouse gas emissions, which results in global warming, 50% of the CO2 emissions come from our region. And after that, half of that, those emissions will come from coal-fired power plants. So you can see how important to concentrate on coal power when it comes to GHG emissions. Therefore, we say ourselves, the battle against climate change will be won or lost in Asia and the Pacific. So what are the opportunities when you have, and the changing landscape under these circumstances? Profound changes in the Asia and the Pacific, falling cost of renewable energy, and if you compare that with the conventional forms of energy. And the other is, of course, enormous, amount of work gone into innovation and low carbon technologies, and we have access to those now. Then global commitments. I don't have to reiterate the importance of sustainable development goals, particularly development goal 7, which talks of universal access. And then Paris alignment, the Paris Agreement 2015, which binds the nations through their national determined contributions to cut down CO2 emissions. On the part of ADB, we have already, enhanced our commitment for climate financing to 100 billion by 2030. And then also we have already committed to make sure that 75% of our projects will have climate action embedded in them. So these are some of the commitments we have, or the changing landscape we see in the energy sector. If you look at our own portfolio, you can see, I don't want to concentrate on other things, but if you look at this, you will see this orange bar, which is basically the electricity network development, transmission and distribution network development. So most of our investments, more than 50% of the investments year to year, we find that we concentrate on transmission and development. That's where mostly the sovereign investments come in. And mostly the private investments cannot be that much attracted to. So therefore, our concentration has been transmission and distribution, and that's an area where we really need to concentrate, even in the future, in a world when the clean energy will play a major role. So if you look at the clean energy itself, you can see from this graph, from this diagram, that 50% of our investments also coming on clean energy. And within clean energy, it's roughly about half of that in renewable energy and the other half in energy efficiency. So if you compare the ADB's energy sector lending against the total lending, of course, 2020 and 2021, they have been outliers because of the additional lending we have had for COVID pandemic. We have billions of dollars, lent to the countries focusing on COVID-related interventions. But otherwise, we have been lending roughly about in the range of about $20 billion. And energy sector has been playing a major role as a contribution to this overall lending. Of course, during these couple of years, it has gone down due to the pandemic and various other reasons where energy sector could not play an larger role because of the absence of missions and then difficulty in going to the field and so on. But overall, roughly about 20 to 25% of ADB lending goes into energy sector. At the same time, you can see ADB has done a great job in terms of overall investments in energy access. We have been able to connect over the years millions of households, people to the access, increase access to energy, particularly electricity supplies. And ADB has been able to spend billions of dollars on that. And if you look at the energy policy overall, we have based our energy policy on 5 important principles. Principle number 1, which is, of course, our focus is on securing energy for a prosperous and an inclusive Asia and the Pacific. So energy access is our central focus, naturally, because we are sitting in a developing region, as I told you. We need to make sure that people have access to energy first. And of course, the second principle, we cannot forget, of course, climate impact of improving energy access. Therefore, we concentrate on building a sustainable and resilient energy future. So there we concentrate on minimum, reducing global emissions and improving the environmental sustainability. These cannot be achieved without, obviously, institutional framework. We should make sure that the institutions obviously play an important role, and we have to have institutional structures and institutions in place to do that. So that's the third principle, and improved governance in the sector. That's the third principle. The fourth one is regional cooperation. As a single country, you cannot survive. Obviously, the more you cooperate within the region and between regions, the better it's going to be for the energy sector development. Then the last but not least is actually energy sector should not be taken as a single sector to proceed with developments, but we have to think of energy sector as part of an overall, sector, cross-sectoral intervention. If you take anything, any project now is cross-sectoral, not a single energy sector project. So if you look at the overall, the salient features of the energy policy, which we put out last year, one thing we are looking at, we continue to look at clean energy, that is renewable energy and energy efficiency, then deployment of renewable energy and decarbonization and phasing out of coal. And in fact, we have said we are not going to fund any coal-fired power stations anymore, and increase resilience, that is adaptation of the energy infrastructure. Then we support deployment of innovative and advanced technologies as much as possible to help energy sector development, encourage phasing out of fossil fuel subsidies and so on. And we have basically made sure that we are not going to support upstream oil and gas projects, and no support for midstream oil projects. And also, we will be very selective when it comes to even supporting gas projects. So going forward, we have said we are concentrating on 4 Ds: decarbonization, decreasing energy intensity in the economy. That means you will get more GDP out of less energy. And digitalization, because in the digital age, we need to make sure that we make the maximum use of it. And then decentralization. We are looking at decentralized energy systems. And implementation highlights, I don't want to go into details again. We are basically using those 4 Ds as our focus going forward. We will facilitate, but we will have a differentiated approach because different countries have different economy development levels, different structures in the economy, and based on that, we need to intervene in different ways. So differentiated approach. Then we are looking at things like energy transition mechanism, where we try to bring down or accelerate decommissioning of coal power plants, and to improve, the reduce energy sector emissions. Then we will try to expand as much as possible on the demand side energy efficiency, which we have not concentrated in that much in the past. And then obviously digitalization, smart power systems, smart distribution networks, so that we can maximize the use of energy and the control of the system as much as possible to maximize the overall benefits to the end consumer. And the most important one is that we are trying to leverage every dollar we invest in through sovereign investments, leverage as much private investments as possible, because you really need millions and trillions of dollars to invest in the power sector, and for that you need to get a lot of private sector investment. We cannot do it alone from sovereign investments. So these are the implementation highlights. A few final remarks. And ADB, as I indicated, will continue to play an important role in energy sector development, not only in the Philippines, but also across developing Asia. And then the focus will gradually shift away from traditional areas of investments into the areas where I talked about, the 4Ds. And then innovative and technologies approaches will take over gradually as a result, and we will bring those technologies to these countries. And as I said, sovereign financing will be used to maximize leveraging private sector investments. These are a few final remarks with which I would like to conclude. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
A big hand once more for Dr. Wijaya Tunga. Thank you very much for that very enlightening talk. To effect sound energy policies, the private sector must work hand in hand with the government. Up next, let's hear from the local government group on what initiatives are in store for the economy and the energy sector.
To talk about that and the economic outlook for 2022 is the current Undersecretary for the NEDA Investment Programming Group and an associate professor at the UP School of Economics. He completed his master's degree in the University of Cambridge and went to Princeton University for postdoctoral studies. At NEDA, he is tasked to oversee the formulation of strategies for efficiency in linking the government's planning, programming, and implementation of projects. He is also tasked to provide policy guidance in the project appraisal, monitoring, evaluation of big-ticket infrastructure projects of the national government, formulation of development plans and policies, and programming of official development assistance, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Undersecretary Joseph J. Capuno.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone in this webinar. Like my predecessor, I would like to thank Meralco for this opportunity to share with you how we in NEDA envision the economy growing from this year up to the 2028. And I look forward to a very interactive session after my presentation. So next slide, please. So I'm going to present the recent Philippine socioeconomic performance and outlook, beginning with the latest socioeconomic developments. Next slide, please. Okay. And then next slide. So for the first semester of this year, the economy expanded by 7.8%, despite the uptick in COVID-19 cases in the first month of the year. Due to the Omicron variant, the economy grew by 8.2% in that quarter. This expansion was sustained in the following quarter, the second quarter, but with a 7.4% real GDP growth. several areas in the countries have been de-escalated to alert level 1. Along with the recently held presidential elections in May, the easing of restrictions further increased economic activities. Among major economies in the region that have already released their first semester real GDP growth, the Philippine economy posts the second fastest growth after India, but faster than Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and China. Next slide, please. Let's see how the growth has been performing throughout the past quarters. Growth in the first semester of 2022 was largely broad-based, mainly driven by domestic demand, which grew by 11.4%. This was supported by household consumption, buoyed by the improvements in consumer sentiments amid the high vaccination rate and easing of mobility restrictions. Investments also sustained its double-digit expansion up to 20.5%, fueled by construction activities of both government and the private sector. Growth in the government spending also increased to 7.8% in the first semester of the year, with the implementation of the 4Ps, tulong pangharap buhay sa ating disadvantaged, displaced workers or TUPAD, as well as the conduct of the national local elections in May. Net exports, meanwhile, declined as imports grew faster than exports. On the production side, all sectors expanded in the first semester of this year, driven by industry and services at 8.3% and 8.7% respectively. Meanwhile, agriculture slightly improved by 0.2% as the sector remained vulnerable to natural calamities and rising input costs. Electricity sector performance has risen relatively firm throughout the pandemic, however. Next slide, please. Nonetheless, some sectors remain below pre-pandemic levels in the second quarter of this year. These include household consumption and exports on the demand side, and transport, accommodation, and other services, including mining, real estate, and manufacturing as well on the supply side. What about the employment figures? We'll see the trends in the next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, in July 2022, an additional 4.9 million Filipinos in employment was generated compared to July 2019 or before the pandemic in 2020. More recently, the unemployment rate slid to 5.3% in August 2022 from a high of 8.1% in the same month last year. With the opening of the economy, and the return of greater commercial activity, the number of employed individuals rose by 3.6% millions rather in August 2022 over the same month in 2021, which brings the total employment to 47.9 million Filipinos. Meanwhile, unemployment in August 2022 remained at 14.7%, which translates to about 548,000 more employed individuals who wanted additional hours of work. This underscores the need to strengthen policy interventions geared toward generating more productive and higher quality employment that provides adequate income for Filipino workers and their families. Very much in the newspaper is the trend about inflation. And let's see what's happening on that score in the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so in 2021, inflation averaged at about 3.4%. That's below 4%, at the upper end of the government's 2 to 4% target. In September 2022, headline inflation, however, increased to 6.9%. Mainly driven by the accelerated increase in international prices of commodities, as well as supply side issues associated with unfavorable weather and the avian influenza. This brings the year-to-date inflation to 5.1%, which is still well above the 2 to 4% target for this year. As of September 2022, the BSP revised its 2022 inflation forecast upwards to 5.6% from its August estimate of 5.4%. By 2023, inflation is seen to ease at 4.1%, however. Next slide, please. With the easing of the restrictions, now we have more freedom to go around, visit malls, visit families, go to the usual travel destination, tourist destination. We have less restrictions going around the country. And with that, 85% of the economy under AL since the second half of June. Google mobility data shows that visits to retail and recreation workplaces and transit stations have already exceeded pre-pandemic levels. So we start enjoying the outdoors as it were. Okay, what about the PMI? Next slide, please. The country's manufacturing PMI continued to improve to 50.9 in September 2022 from about 51.2 in August. This is the 8th consecutive time that it posted above the 50.0 neutral threshold, and also the fastest in 3 months. Strong client demand boosted factory orders and induced firms to scale up production. So how do we summarize everything so far? So the next slide will highlight the key observations about the Philippine macroeconomy. So the first one is that recovery is underway with robust domestic demand, and which is expected to be sustained over the period, and in the process sustain the country's growth momentum as the economy fully reopens. On the demand side, consumption accounts for 85% of the 7.8% growth in the first half of the year, while on the supply side, the services sector accounts for nearly 2/3 of the growth that we have been experiencing so far. Improvements in mobility, the return of tourism, and the inflow of remittances are expected to further buoy the economy despite the external headwinds. Now, the next slide will show you the medium-term socioeconomic targets that the government has set itself to achieve. So the economy as a whole is targeted to grow by 6.5 to 8% through 2028. Unemployment rate will be reduced from about 8% in 2021 to a range of 4 to 5% in 2028. The percentage of wage and salaried workers in the private establishments to total employed workers will increase from 48% in 2021 to above 50%, meaning 53 to 55% in 2028. At least we're targeting the gross national income to reach about $4,256 per capita by 2024. This will allow us to attain the upper middle income status that has long eluded us for some years by now. Poverty, on the other hand, is targeted to decline to 9% of the population by 2028. So we expect it to hit single digit by the end of the current administration. The ratio of the national government budget deficit to GDP is targeted to decline gradually down to its pre-pandemic level of 3%, again by the end of the current administration. However, we also target the reduction of the government debt, national government debt to GDP ratio to below 60% 2-3 years from now, that is by 2025, while maintaining infrastructure spending at between 5 to 6% of GDP each year between now and 2028. Now, despite the higher inflation in 2022 and 2023, it is targeted to stabilize, however, between 2 to 4% in 2024 up to 2028. So how do we in government plan to achieve all those targets? Now, the next slide will show further the domestic external risk that we're facing and that we're considering in the government as we plan and for the coming years. So the Marcos administration is well aware of our economy's domestic and external risks. This includes factors that could disrupt our food supply, including elevated commodity and input prices aggravated by geopolitical and trade tensions, the spread of infectious animal diseases, inclement weather, and issues in global value chains. The slowdown of major trading partners and the emergence of new public health concerns may also result in weaker demand for goods and services worldwide. The tighter fiscal space and limited absorptive capacity of implementing agencies may also result in challenges in assisting vulnerable population segments. Still, the administration's economic team is confident that our robust economy can sail through these turbulent waters. We firmly believe that with the right policies moving forward, we can capably address current and emerging issues and sustain the growth momentum we have gathered thus far. Next slide, please. Next slide. But we'd like to tell our participants that we in government are ready to address the above-mentioned concerns as we gear towards economic transformation for a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient society. Next slide. You may have already heard about the administration's 8-point socioeconomic agenda, but let me discuss them briefly in the remaining time that I have. The first 3 points focus on the near-term issues. These include protecting the main theme. The first main theme is protecting the purchasing power of families by ensuring food security, reducing transport and logistic costs, and reducing energy costs to families. This will include mitigating the scattering that we have experienced from COVID-19 by ensuring the capacity of the healthcare system to address future health risks, addressing learning losses, and strengthening our existing social protection programs, which include the 4 Ps. As well, we will ensure sound macroeconomic fundamentals with our policies and ensure further that the government remains efficient in its processes. We're addressing this issue of fiscal bind in several fronts. First, we will have the growth, so we'll have the revenues later. And we're able to spend it wisely and efficiently. That is, even as we generate tax revenues, we also would like to spend them as efficiently and effectively as possible. Now, what about over the medium term? Now, for the medium term, the agenda is about creating more jobs, quality jobs, and green jobs. Creating jobs is about encouraging more investments so that there will be higher demand for workers, improving infrastructure, and ensuring energy security, which we know is a major constraint to investment, especially in high-tech investment sectors. On the supply side, we want to improve the quality of jobs. So this is about increasing employability and advancing R&D and innovation, and enhancing the digital economy. Digital economy is not just about digital infrastructure. This also includes contents, users, and producers in the digital world. Next is creating green jobs, which means, among other things, establishing livable and sustainable communities and pursuing a green and blue economy. For the enabling environment, we want to ensure that the playing field is level for everybody. That is, the competition policy and regulatory policies will ensure that everybody gets, a fair treatment, as it were. And also, we'd like to ensure public order, safety, peace, and security, because without this, investors would think twice before using their money to create more jobs. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide. As you know, on several occasions, the president has announced that the NEDA will deliver the Philippine Development Plan for 2023-2028 by the end of this year. Actually, we're targeting early December to have the plan out there for public dissemination. So, what is the PDP? The PDP is the as it were the general guidebook for the government's plans, programs, and policies that will ensure the achievement of the 8-point socioeconomic agenda of the current administrations. So the PDP strategies will bring back the country in the high growth path, and more importantly, begin economic transformation for a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient society. This transformation is in line with the SDGs and critical for achieving the country's long-term vision of providing matatag, maginhawa, at panatag na buhay para sa lahat, which you probably have heard is the slogan of the Ambition 2040 that was crafted during Aquino's term. By economic transformation, we mean to transform the economic sector, institutions, the social sector, and the environment. The PDP is focused on individuals and families, because individuals and families will have the capability to enjoy, we want them to have the capability to enjoy prosperous life, and will be resilient against shocks that may erode their purchasing power. The production sectors, meanwhile, will be transformed so that these are able to generate more and better quality jobs, primarily for Filipino workers, and produce competitive products both for the Philippine and international markets. There will be a favorable business climate characterized by macroeconomic stability, healthy competition, and regulatory efficiency. Infrastructure, both economic and social, will be expanded and upgraded. You probably heard of the Build Better More mantra of the current government, which is an expansion and continuation of the Build, Build, Build program of the previous administration. Political stability resulting from peace and security and the practice of good governance will be ensured as well. Resilience to the impacts of disasters and climate change will be strengthened. One of the strategies, you would say, on how we want to specifically achieve or implement those broad strategies I've outlined earlier. We're thinking of key legislations that we need to put in place and achieve, hopefully, in the medium term, to get us all started on a better footing. So the next slide will show you the key legislations that the government is setting in place to support the economic recovery. So on top, you can see there the National Government Right-Sizing Program. Then we have the Budget Modernization Bill. Continue with the Tax Package 3 or the Valuation Reform Bill. And the next one is Tax Package 4, the Passive Income and Financial Intermediary Taxation Act, E-Government Act, Internet Transactions Act, or the E-Commerce Law, Government Financial Institution Unified Initiative to Distress Enterprises for Economic Recovery, Medical Reserve Corps, National Disease Prevention Management Authority, and the creation of the Virology Institute of the Philippines. Now, that ends my slide. The next slide. Next slide. Oh, so these are a continuation of the other key legislative initiatives that the government is setting in motion, including Department of Water Resources, Unified System of Separation, Retirement, and Pension, and so forth and so on. Well, the last point is really important, or the last 2 points, since we're talking about energy. So the amendments to the Electricity Power Industry Reform Act or EPIRA, that's in the pipeline, and also to encourage public-private partnerships, not only in the energy sector but in all aspects of public services. So we're going to have a new build, operate, transfer law, hopefully by the end of the year. Actually, at least that's the target. Okay, so I won't dwell too much on those legislative initiatives, but end at this point. And I would like to thank you again, and look forward to discussion later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yusek Capuno. Let's give Yusek Capuno another round of applause, everyone.
Thank you very much, Yusek Capuno. And before we proceed to the open panel discussion, allow me to recap Dr. Priyanta Wijayatunga's presentation. So what I really liked about his presentation is that he highlighted that most of the investments are lean towards clean energy and sustainability, network expansion, such that for distribution and transmission and its development, and support for innovative technologies, especially for the energy sector. And I'm glad to hear that it's actually aligned with Meralco's goals. So I look forward to talk more about those in the open panel discussion. How about you, Rick? What are your takeaways?
Thank you, Dane. Coming from Yusek Capuno's presentation, what really struck me was when he mentioned it's good to know that recovery is pretty much on its way because of the robust domestic demand, which is expected to support the country's growth. And another is how he detailed the 8-point socioeconomic agenda of the administration. And what struck me most is that one section in the near-term goal, wherein there's this intent to support the community by lowering the prices of energy or the cost of electricity. It's good to know that Meralco is likewise aligned to this initiative. Like we do have programs like the compliance to the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. We do have those right-sizing activities that Meralco constantly does for its customers. So back to you, Dane.
Yes, and to discuss more about that, and allow us to call on Dr. Priyanta Wijayatunga and Yusek Joseph Capuno of NEDA to answer our questions and join us in a lively and informative discussion.
And joining us in our panel this afternoon is a proud graduate of St. Scholastica's College, Manila. At present, she is the president and CEO of Harryfield Asia Resources, Inc., the official distributor of Hyundai commercial vehicles in the Philippines, and Chang'an Motor Philippines, Inc., the official distributor of Chang'an cars in the Philippines. She counts over 40 years of combined experience and expertise in the automotive and real estate industries. She joins us today as president of the Association of Vehicle Importers and Distributors, Inc. Please welcome Ms. Maria Perez Agudo.
We also have the Executive Director for Investor Services of KMC Savills. He has been in the real estate industry for over 10 years and has overseen the assessment, acquisition, development, and sale of high net properties in the Philippines. He handles the operational functions of the departments under investor services, including asset management and investments. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Jose Carmelo Porciuncola.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Last but not the least is Meralco's very own lead specialist for forecasting utility economics, Mr. Jobet Isaac V. Del Rosario.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Since they're all here, let's now open the floor for the open panel discussion. So let's start off with Dr. Vijaya Tunga. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you. You know, your presentation revolved most about the Asia and Pacific, but we'd like to particularly know what do you think are the opportunities that you see are unique in the Philippine energy sector development, particularly in addressing the climate challenge?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Once again, it's great to be part of this panel, and we have a great panel. I can see that. So when it comes to the Philippines, we see one thing, very committed, very considerable political commitment and vast potential for renewable energy sources, and significant private sector participation in electricity distribution and retail. Now, this is quite unique in the Philippines compared to many of the Southeast Asian countries. So that provides an opportunity for sure to do a lot in this country. And we believe these allow the country to move very quickly into its low carbon energy transition. For example, we have seen huge progress with large battery storage projects in the country, making it one of the leading countries in the region driven by private sector, private entrepreneurship. And as a result, you know, we can move fast in this area. If the right policies are in place, the market can grow even further. Therefore, ADB is working with the government on regulation of ancillary services. And the other is, of course, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act you have had and approved in 2019 has been a major step in the right direction, and a serious, serious commitment made by the country. And however, the challenge is now is to ensure that the implementation is taken forward and enforcement of the regulatory framework is in place, and necessary incentives are derived from the act eventually implemented. So as you know, energy efficiency is a low-hanging fruit which can serve a lot when it comes to addressing climate change challenges. And we believe the public sector can lead by example by supporting investments in energy efficiency, things like rooftop solar. You have rooftop solar in ADB roof itself, as you know, and electric vehicles in public buildings and so on. Through bulk public procurement. I can remember some time ago, we introduced bulk procurement of compact fluorescent lamp, energy efficient lamps in the Philippines. So that kind of approaches can be brought, to invest in energy efficiency related investments that will bring down overall costs, when it comes to, implementation, deployment of those technologies, and to exploit the economies of scale. So these are some of the unique opportunities you have in the Philippines in the energy sector, helping eventually address the climate challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Vijaya Tunga. You mentioned about the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. And you mentioned also that the challenge really is in the implementation. I believe Meralco is one of the key information distributors of this particular act. No, but what I'd really like to know is what are these particular challenges that holds the implementation for the act. Maybe we can ask from our private or public sector. Sorry. May we call on first Miss Miss Agudo?
Yeah, I got here from the chat group just now, and which is related to your question also on how the industry is ready to embrace sustainable energy sources at this point. And then you were trying to link it with our speaker on certain acts, or whether what are the challenges or hindrances, no, in the implementation of this act. As far as the automotive industry is concerned, there has been a major step done, and that is the enactment of the law of Republic Act 11697 on the electric vehicle industry, or the Electric Vehicle Industry Act, which we call the EVIDA. We believe that this is a major step because EVIDA outlines the regulatory framework and creates a comprehensive roadmap for the operations of electric vehicles in the country. With the EVIDA in place and the possibility of key tax incentives in the EV industry, we can anticipate that the infrastructure and market demand will soon follow. This will also show that adapting to the sustainable energy resources is much viable, as what the question is being raised, on sustainable energy sources. It will now become viable in the country as long as the stakeholders, and that of course is government and private sector, can work together to build the right ecosystem. So the answer is we are prepared, we are getting ready to embrace sustainable energy sources at this point. Now, further to that, why should a framework be in place? Of course, the global EV sales has doubled in a record of 6.6 million from last year, when it started only at 120,000 in 2012. But the EV sales are still lagging in emerging and developing countries like the Philippines, because the mass market cannot afford yet the few available models. So this will be what the EVIDA would be developing, would be developing guidelines and incentives. But today, the EVIDA already mandates a 5% EV share in corporate fleet accounts. It has a dedicated parking slot for EV vehicles, the installation of charging stations, of course, and there would also be green routes for the EV vehicles. So there will, and of course, there will be fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. So with this framework, the electric vehicles, the EVIDA, or the electric vehicle industry, will be guided, in order for us to have a very sustainable journey in the country.
Thank you for that, Ms. Agudo. I wonder, what do you think will be the best things to be prioritized from all that you've mentioned, like the installation of the chargers, the availability of the EV vehicles, the electric vehicles in the Philippines, and so on. What do you think will be best to be prioritized in the short term, so that the said industry can move forward, in the Philippine economy?
As I've said, we are part of the emerging and developing countries that are already lagging, in terms of the infrastructure. The EV vehicles are ready. The big countries, developing countries, big countries such as Europe, China, US, Japan, has already mandated, and committed that they will be in full EV in year 2025, 2030, 2040, up to even year 2050. But and this is where the country, the Philippines, should be reflecting upon on. And so, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? As far as we have the product already on hand, we have the consumers ready to pay a premium in order to get the these sustainable products. So we just have to fast track really the promulgation and implementation of the EVIDA, and at the same time encourage investments, no, not only for local and foreign investments to come to create the environment, no, for the EVs to become more affordable. So if there will be more charging stations, yes. If there will be electrification tariffs, no, that will make it cheaper to the cost of ownership of the vehicle. These are the priority programs that has to be in place soon in order for us to catch up. So more and more in the supply chain, the future-proofed products for sustainability are already in place. So definitely we are just being challenged right now. We don't know when we see the light there, but the current business model inflation, which is the rising prices, particularly oil, and that of the interest rates, which of course would I would say impact on the cost of ownership. So these are things that are really on the table for I would say for not only for discussion but for solutions, I would say. Yes.
Thank you for that, Ms. Agudo. How about from KMC Savos, Mr. Porciuncola? We'd like to know more about how the commercial sector is embracing sustainability.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon again. Well, the thing with commercial real estate, I believe it's one of the first industries to really adapt. Although we have local legislation in the Green Building Code, we actually have two private certification initiatives, which is LEED and BERDE. So LEED is the international initiative and BERDE is the local initiative, and both have gotten a lot of compliance within the industry. If you look at majority of the new buildings being put up, it is actually mostly green buildings or LEED certified or BERDE certified. This is also a product of a lot of multinational companies and a lot of local conglomerates pushing for green spaces or LEED certified spaces for their HQs. So their commitment with their environmental, social, and governance initiatives are really pushing the industry towards this. Yeah, so there.
Thank you, Mr. Porciuncola. How about you, Rick? Do you have a question?
Well, thank you very much, Dane. I would like to raise this question on behalf of our participant. We have the question came from Mark Eggman of Incorp Global Singapore. The question is to help our local green campaign. How does NEDA help these businesses transition from fossil fuel products to electrical powered tools? Can we consider giving them some incentives or any other reasons to help us transition from a country being powered by renewable energy?
Yeah. Well, since I think the one who raised the question comes from the private sector, right?
Yes.
So one of the more recent initiatives or concrete actions that we have undertaken is the revision of the Build, Operate, Transfer Law, the IRR of the Build, Operate, Transfer Law. So whereas the previous version of this IRR, raised the question about the bankability and financial viability of private sector initiatives in energy, in transport, in so many sectors, we managed to address those concerns in the current IRR version. So I think that's one concrete initiative where we can, perhaps we may not be able to provide incentives, but at least reduce the uncertainties faced by the private sector wanting to invest into energy, transport, even bringing in new technology to the country and profit from them without, unnecessary risk because of, regulatory uncertainties, as it were. So that's one very concrete, development that I could say to address the concern of our colleague from the private sector.
Thank you very much, Yusek Capuno. I have here another question, and we'd be addressing this to Dr. Wijaya Tunga. With expectations the global economy will go through a recession due to high interest rates, how will the ASEAN or the Philippines fare? Should governments continue to spend in infrastructure, for example, energy, as debts gets more expensive?
Thank you. Very interesting question. So it's a matter of, taking a balance between infrastructure development and the rest of the economic subsectors in the economy. As you know, if you spend, on infrastructure, it's long-term returns, and particularly the energy sector. Energy sector is something which will continue to need investments because the demand continuously rise. You don't have drop in demand except under very special circumstances like when you have COVID pandemic. So by investing in energy infrastructure, I don't think you ever lose out. I think it's long-term investments, and I think it's important to have those investments continuing even under current, high interest regimes. Because you really need energy for everything, virtually in all economic subsectors. So there is no, doubt that we need to continue investing in the energy infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Just a follow through. This question goes to Miss Fe Perez Agudo.
Mhm.
Ma'am, can you react on how the commercial sector is embracing sustainability in the Philippines?
Okay. When you say first, today the commercial sector, let's say for example the consumers, no, as they have been influenced, no, by the pandemic, and they have the good point is the pandemic has really influenced the views of consumers as they have become more accepting to environmentally friendly or sustainable products. And we have seen this in so many researches in the past, no? So that's why business models are now changing into making products that are more accessible, more affordable, but more sustainable. So that is, and then as to how this is being embraced, it's a very tough question because the market leaders today or business leaders today are challenged against a backdrop of chaos and disruption. So as if everyone's in a tightrope balancing the long-term imperative of how to protect the planet and the short-term need, of course, to protect their bottom line. So this kind of, but then because of the consumer, I would say, clamor, no, to have as a top of mind is sustainability. In the commercial sector right now, our business are now investing a lot into processes from planning, research and development through manufacturing, logistic delivery, and the maintenance that are really geared toward sustainable processes, no? So as a matter of fact, there's the so-called G2000 manufacturers that are really already eyeing into, they call it the traceability technology in order to boost transparency and I would say mitigate and how to mitigate risk, no? that also goes with it. So this is how the commercial sector is embracing sustainability. At the same time, more manufacturers are investing in data infrastructure, business analytics. So this is where the new platform will be, in order for us to not really embrace it, but to live and breathe sustainability.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Agudo. Yes, for the next question, I'd like to direct this to Mr. Jobet Del Rosario. Yes. So the question is, what is Meralco's participation in the economic recovery of the Philippines?
Hello, good afternoon again. We know for the economy to prosper, we need reliable and sufficient supply of energy. Our franchise area is responsible for about half the Philippine GDP. We have been investing heavily in our electric distribution network, and we stand ready to provide the kind of electric service needed by our local companies to compete in our globalized market. We work closely with our customers as part of their own strategic planning so that the electric service will be available and can grow as their businesses grow. We strive to continuously improve power quality and reliability, as demonstrated by the decline in frequency and duration of outages. We also engage with our customers to better serve them. We go out of our way to offer tailor-fit energy solutions that will improve their bottom line. We have cases of our customers who were able to save, become more efficient, and were able to expand their businesses. The more efficient customers operate, the more room for expansion, benefiting not just the customers themselves, but the whole country for economic revival.
Thank you very much, Mr. Del Rosario. We'll have another question from the chat, from the audience. Okay, I think this is for Mr. Wijayatunga. All right. So the question is, has there been any study on the optimal energy mix for the Philippines or Asia as a whole? And how much will renewable energy pull down the cost of electricity, particularly in the Philippines?
That's again a very interesting question. Unfortunately, I don't have the information on the Philippines with me, but my colleague, of course, would be able to provide that information. But overall, this is one area where we always support from ADB side. In most of the countries, we have supported looking at optimal energy planning and see what the optimal generation mix can be. Now, increasingly, this mix will have more and more renewable energy because of the falling cost of renewable energy. And of course, with energy storage, technologies becoming widely available and cheaper, like in the Philippines, for instance, you have energy storage technologies brought in to the system. And so the energy mix is likely to be more and more cleaner as against the traditional systems we used to see with fossil fuels, particularly coal, gas, and oil. So I presume, even without looking at the exact numbers, Philippines will have the same trend as we move forward, and more clean energy will have economically viable solutions will be incorporating more and more renewables in the Philippines too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Priyanka.
All right. At this point, we would be closing our Q&A. And to our participants, for your questions are very important to us. For those that were not answered, don't worry. We have taken note of your questions, and our relationship managers will get back to you with answers.
Yes, and that was certainly an enlightening discussion. We hope that this exchange has helped you to better appreciate the state of the economy, opportunities, and growth areas for both private and public sectors.
For sharing their knowledge and expertise, we would like to thank our panelists, Dr. Priyanta Wijayatunga, Yusek Joseph Capuno, Ms. Maria Fe Perez Agudo, Mr. Melo Porciuncula, and Mr. Jobet Del Rosario.
We at Meralco acknowledge the importance of the exchange of information. So if you have any more questions or points you want clarified, we are now showing a QR code on the screen that you can scan. This will give you direct access to our leads per industry. Likewise, you can reach out to us via email and through hotline.
Also, be reminded that we are going to send you a post-event survey via email. We would love to find out your thoughts about this afternoon's webinar. And of course, this is just one in a series of webinars that will allow us to hear from some of the acclaimed thought leaders today as they share their knowledge and insights.
So we're informing you ahead of time about the Interruptible Load Program or ILP webinar on November 18. In any case, we shall be sending out invitations ahead of time.
Lastly, we are now showing on screen the QR code for you to be part of the Viber group for enterprise and national government accounts. Make sure to scan it so you can get instant access and more information about the developments and programs in the enterprise and national government.
It has been a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I'm Dane Rialuyo.
And I'm Rick Panes, thanking you for joining us, and I hope to see you again on November 18 for our next webinar. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.